Good morning and welcome to SimWorld today. We are back in our normal swing of things. We'll be back on camera here later this week. But we are back with Rick Blaze here on a Monday morning, March 10th. Good morning, Rick. How are you?
Yo, 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 what's up, my good people? Happy spring break to those who are on spring break
Oh,
and
it's
those
this
who
week now.
aren't. Yeah, I guess you're not, but yeah, let's
I
get
am
to it.
not. I am most certainly not on spring break. I think I'm on the opposite of spring break. We got plenty to get to. We've got some storylines as we approach 7 weeks left in the regular season, which means this week in particular, very chaotic in college basketball. We've got top 25 reactions, but wanted to start with a little game, and we're going to call this one "Who Do You Doubt?" After a absolutely stunning week in college basketball in which 8 of the top 15 teams all lost, including every single team from 8 through 14. It was a very, very interesting week in college basketball. So, Rick, of the top contenders, who do you doubt after the week that was?
Well, like I said it before, I said it again. Virginia Tech. I know everyone loves them some Virginia Tech, and I know they played pretty well up until this point. But I think Virginia Tech is an above average team that's overachieved for most of the season, and I think we're going to start to see now Virginia Tech come crashing down to earth. They are now 18-4. They're 3-2 in their last five games, so they're badly above 500 in the last 5 games. So I think Virginia Tech is one of those teams where, they're ranked number 8, and they're the top of those 8 through 14 teams you were talking about. And I think since them being at the top of 8, that's where we should start. The number 18, Virginia Tech, I think that they are going to be a first round knockout, like I predicted earlier in the year. Things are kind of coming to fruition. They're an above average team. They're a really good team, but they've been playing. They've, as my coach would say, they've outkicked their coverage, and it's finally catching up to them now. And I think that we're gonna now start to see the decline, or not. Let me not say decline, but them coming back to the fray, and we're gonna see the real Virginia Tech is gonna stand up, and I think they're gonna be one and done. It is what it is.
So Virginia Tech, I agree with you on that. Of the teams that I really think the line in the sand of contenders right now is somewhere between 15 and 20. So this means that I'm not going to say Princeton is a team that I doubt, despite the fact that I do very much doubt them. But I kind of always said I thought they were a team that if they made the Sweet, even when they were ranked in the top 10, if they made the Sweet 16, I thought that was a really great season for Princeton. But Virginia Tech, I'm with you there. Now I'm gonna disagree on the fact that they get bounced in the first round because they're probably going to end up with a 2 or a 3 seed, which means they're probably going to end up playing somebody like maybe a Creighton or a Tennessee or someone like that that's like at or below 500 in the first round. I don't think they're losing there. But if you look at their track record, I think that there's two things that are very true. It's very hard to only lose 4 games in a season, and it's very hard to be at 22 games, 18-4. These are the teams that have 4 or fewer losses on the season, and one of them is most certainly not like the other. Duke, Alabama, Texas, Villanova, Kentucky, Virginia Tech. Those are your
Yeah,
6 teams that have 4 or fewer losses right now in college basketball. Here's the problem with Virginia Tech. Who are their 4 losses against? Kansas, that's a top 25 team. Alabama, that's a top 5 team. Duke, that's the number 1 team. And Louisville, that's a number, I think, 15. Their only notable wins this season are UNLV, unranked, Butler, currently ranked, and Dayton, unranked. Those are their notable wins. And there's an argument to be had. I'm not going to have it right now, but there's an argument to be had is UNLV and Dayton are those notable wins. But those are teams like fringe top 25 teams. Those are their wins. So Virginia Tech has been very, very good. And I think we talked about this earlier in the season, even when you were saying, and again, I think we've always disagreed on where they get knocked out. I think we've agreed on this much. All season long, they have been a winning basketball team. But when they play good basketball teams, great basketball teams, they do not meet it. They have been close in those games. All those games have been decided by 9 or fewer points, including 3 points against Louisville and 6 points against Kansas. They have been close in those games, but they do not have the killer ability to finish them off.
100%. And just for SNG, we can throw an hour in that too. Sherwood is out. They're out. I mean, it's not even. We don't even have to even. Sherwood's out. I was out. We don't even have to go deeper than what that is right there. It is what it is.
Until we know what he looks like. I mean, they've said 4 weeks he's reevaluated. That means at the beginning of April, which means that he has another month before the regular season ends. Yes, I'm with you. If Sherwood is not playing, that team I certainly doubt. All right, let's go to the top 25. Speaking of Lemarian Sherwood in Iowa, a pretty interesting top 25, and I was very curious to see how this was going to look, considering the teams that lost last week. Being so many of them. Again, just a recap of the teams that lost. Virginia Tech, number 6. This was last week. Mississippi State, Iowa, UCLA, Georgia Tech, Arkansas, Maryland, Princeton, Gonzaga, New Mexico, SMU. So normally you'd see some losses shake up that middle grouping of college basketball. There wasn't much shaking up of that grouping. Virginia Tech lost, they fell 2 spots. Iowa stayed at number 9. UCLA stayed at number 10. Georgia Tech stayed at number 11. I mean, I know that you've been a big stickler for, hey, you lose, you should fall. It was really hard, Rick, to kind of justify if I'm looking at it. Who you lose and who should fall.
Now this week I agree with everything because everybody lost. So it's like, okay,
that's my point.
It's no everybody stay where you at because everybody lost. Like the guys the teams that was supposed to jump the teams that lost also lost. So when the losers lose and the losers also lose, no one wins. And that's what happened this week. So I'm cool with the geezers in the top 25 this week. I think again, everybody who was supposed to jump the team that lost actually also lost. So everybody just stand pat, hold what you got, and we'll see you again next time around.
I do have 3 takeaways. These are my 3 takeaways. First one, Iowa was the first of 3 teams to not move, right? Iowa, UCLA, Georgia Tech in that 9, 10, 11 range. I think that the top 25 is clearly looking at Iowa and saying, whatever you guys do right now, we know is not who you are. So, right, I mean, that's just, again, everyone lost, so if it's a lot easier to make that case right now, but I think they're looking at Iowa saying, you lost a game to Minnesota, who does get the bump up from 25 to 20 with that win, but you don't have your best player. So we can't really move you too much before we see more of that. And I think it's a fair question. How do you rank Iowa without their best player? Second note that I found, Arkansas falling from 12 to 16, so I guess I technically have 4. That was interesting because a lot of teams did not fall. The third thing, Princeton has a plummet of 8 spots from 14 to 22, but I think the most notable one, Louisville goes from number 15 all the way up to number 7.
Well, I say in Louisville's case, I think they've been slighted a couple of times this year in the top 25. We have to remember that these are actually human beings that's making these decisions. And so I can see them saying, you know what, I think early in the year there have been some times where we probably didn't give Louisville their just due in the rankings. So let's kind of overdo it a little bit. So they kind of overcooked the books a little bit for Louisville to get in number 7. But as far as I was concerned, I'm cool where they are now because they're going to lose every game until Sherwood comes back. So the Iowa situation is going to work itself completely out in just a few moments. So you could have put them at number 1 this week. It's not going to matter because they're going to lose they're going to lose every single game until Sherwood comes back.
So to Louisville, because I think that's the one that has the most interest, right? This is a basketball team that, you're right, they have moved all around the top 25. They've been up there earlier in the season. I'm trying to look through some of the old ones to see where they had made it to, but they had been up into the top 25, like in the teens, and then they were all the way out of the top 25, and now they're back in at number 7. And I think that if you look at this group up until December 5th, this team wasn't good. They were at the December 5th mark after losing 3 straight games to Iowa, Auburn, and Butler. I mean, two pretty good teams. 2 of those 3 being pretty good teams. They were 5-5. They were a 500 basketball team. Yes, they had beaten Kentucky in back-to-back games, but they also lost to Kansas and they lost to Houston. So they were this up and down team that wasn't playing well. Since then, they've still had some questionable losses, losing to Minnesota, which is a top 25 team, twice, losing to North Carolina, but they've started to be much more consistent in their basketball games, beating Georgia Tech, beating Virginia Tech. You start to add those up with who they are. It makes sense to me that this team would fluctuate as much as they would. I don't know that this is still a great basketball team, but they've been a heck of a lot more consistent, especially since losing those two Louisville games back on December 30th. They've been 7-1. And yeah, their one loss to North Carolina isn't great, but them being at number 7, I think, is as indicative of this lack of consistent contenders that we've had in college basketball this season more than anything else.
Yeah, and what I would say about Louisville, and I think the reason why they've been all over the board as far as the top 25 is concerned is they have in games in weeks that they have streaks of struggling, they've always beat the big teams.
Right.
Louisville has been the giant killers all season long, so they will lose 3 straight games to teams 500 and below, and then beat Kentucky, a team like that. You know what I mean? So I think that's the reason why their spurts of in and out the top 25 is what it is, because they've been inconsistent. But one thing they have been consistent as the bigger the team, the better they play, and they've been consistent at that, and which is scary come tournament time.
Yes, it's a team they're probably gonna end up with a top 3 seed just based off the way they've played and the way college basketball's panned out. And if they do that, then they're a team that can make a legitimate run. All right, let's look ahead to the week that is. And this is, again, a consequential one, just as last week was, but they get more and more consequential until suddenly they are not. So, Rick, with a big slate of action coming up, what is the storyline that you're watching in the week ahead?
I think there's two. You said storyline, not storylines, but I'm going to mention SEC. I think they're more like the UFC. It's a straight up dog fight between that. Also, another conference I'm looking at is the Pac-12. I believe that UCLA is the best team in the Pac-12, but it's still wide open in the Pac-12. Like you got teams like Utah that's trying to climb up and get some action in there, right? So it's wide open. California's breathing down UCLA's neck for the conference championship. I thought Arizona was going to be in. They've kind of fallen to the fray. So I don't. They have an identity crisis. I don't know what's going on with them. But the Pac-12 is going to be interesting, and the SEC is a straight up knock 'em out dog fight. It's a war of attrition in the SEC.
Yeah, Tuesday is a massive, massive day in the SEC. Mississippi State visits Kentucky, Arkansas visits South Carolina, and Florida plays Auburn. Those are your top top four of your top 4 teams plus a team that's right on the outside. So South Carolina, Alabama, I mean, that could have been the game of the week. Instead, it's Villanova and St. John's, which is an equally big game because, of course, you get Justin Bell in action. But that is a huge. I mean, we're going to see changes atop the SEC. South Carolina, Alabama is the first one. You got first place on the line in the SEC. Mississippi State is trying, and Kentucky are both trying to stay within. I mean, a win by Kentucky here, and somebody between South Carolina and Alabama is going to lose, and suddenly Kentucky's back into a tie for second place, and Florida has to keep pace with Auburn. I mean, they're 13-10 overall, but they're 5-2 in SEC play. They've been playing really good now that we're in conference play. The same challenge exists. So to me, that's what I'm looking forward to. But I'm glad you mentioned the Pac-12 because we do get. I mean, this is a huge week, right? You get South Carolina, Alabama. Those are the top 2 teams in the SEC on Tuesday night. We'll move to Thursday, and we've got Cal and UCLA, as you mentioned, also the top 2 teams in the Pac-12 in action. So it is a massive week in terms of positioning. And Rick, I didn't plan for this to be the question, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you find that this makes college basketball more entertaining for it to just be a title game as opposed to moving into a conference tournament format?
I do. I do. I like because there's so much on the line, right? When you have these types of games. Yeah, I like this. I
It
really,
matters, right?
yeah. It kind of that's what, because this type of format is what makes the SWFL so exciting, because it's one game, it's 2 teams. You win, or you go home. Like it is what it is. It's and so what happens is I like that. I like that a lot because I believe anything can happen. All you got to do is get hot at the right time. You can catch
Right.
you can catch lightning in a bottle if you get lucky enough. And I like that a lot actually. I do.
So this is the week, and I agree. I think this makes. I have always been a proponent of make the regular season matter. I mean, the league with the regular season that matters the most is the English Premier League, right? Where you're just looking at points
Right.
and you talk about just it doesn't matter if you win the last game of the season. You gotta be good all season long. I think that matters. I've preferred this, but and just to underscore that point, this is what matters this week. And normally, what would just be a battle for seeding. Arkansas and South Carolina play for first place. Dayton and Kansas are playing for second place in the Big 12, which of course gets you into the conference tournament. SMU, who's 5-3 right now in the American Conference, behind them is Princeton, Davidson, and Houston. All of them are 4-3, and they're playing. All of them are in action, so that's huge. Purdue over the weekend, Purdue and Illinois played for second place in the Big Ten. So every single day, just about, it moved to Thursday, right, with Cal and UCLA, who we talked about already. And then, oh, by the way, the ACC, the slugfest of it, you've got Virginia Tech and North Carolina. Winner of that game stays relevant in the chase behind Duke and Louisville. Loser of that's probably out, and North Carolina has the head, both of them have the head-to-head, or no, just for North Carolina, excuse me, has the head-to-head over Louisville, so suddenly the slope is slippery for Louisville to have to win, otherwise they get into a second loss and North Carolina's ahead of them. So
Yeah.
to me, I love this, and it's so chaotic because one day you're thinking this is the situation, and then it changes and it's tomorrow, and it's a totally different one. And the fact that we're gonna avoid a Duke Notre Dame first round matchup in the ACC, a meaningless game. You don't Notre Dame could win that game, and nobody in the nation is gonna think Duke is a better or is a worse basketball team. Let's just take it off the table then. I'm loving this. The only thing I might say is take the top four teams, but even that, I don't even think is a necessary solution. What we have here is fantastic. All right, that's our show. We've got a huge week ahead, as we mentioned. Penn State and Rutgers get rolling on, that was last night. Notre Dame and Virginia, Indiana, Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State get rolling here on Monday night. And then Tuesday is a massive slate of action. We've got multiple top 25 matchups going on. And of course, our game of the week comes up on Wednesday. Villanova and St. John's. Justin Bell, Kaishan Ship, a pair of top recruits for the SWBA draft this season and next, go head to head in Big East play. All right, Rick, it was great chatting with you once again. We're back tomorrow morning here on SimWorld TV to dive into it all and keep the train rolling on what has been a very entertaining college basketball season. We'll talk to you tomorrow here on SimWorld TV, the only place you can see the game, be the game.
Yep.